Welcome to Sane-ish, the podcast for people healing from trauma, addiction, abuse, mental health struggles, grief, narcissists, and every other flavor of chaos life can throw at you. And somehow still functioning, mostly. I'm your host, Holley Broughton, survivor, truth teller, boundary setter, and proud member of the Still Healing, Still Hilarious Club. Around here, we don't do shame or embarrassment. We don't do perfection. Just real talk, dark humor, hard truths, and a whole lot of hope. Because sanity is overrated. And healing, that shit is messy. This is Sane-ish. Let's get into it. Disclaimer. On the Sane-ish Podcast, we discuss personal stories of alcoholism, addiction, mental health, chronic illness, narcissistic abuse, domestic violence, SA, HT, parental alienation, grief, loss, homelessness, as well as many other forms of adversities in life. Our intention is to be inspirational, educational, identifiable, and resourceful. The views and experiences shared are in no way meant to praise or condone any illegal or harmful behavior. This content is for educational purposes only and not intended as professional advice. If you or someone you know is struggling with any of the above, we strongly suggest seeking help from a qualified professional, support service, or hotline related to your specific issue. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Sane-ish Podcast. Holley Broughton here. And today I have Jeff Steiner with me. He's the executive director of the Dad's Resource Center in Pennsylvania. And I would like to welcome him to the Sane-ish Podcast. This is kind of new for me to speak to an executive director of an organization, but he was very kind to offer his time to talk to me. But I'm very interested to discuss some of the things with him about his organization and talk to him about, some of the dads that he works with and how the organization got started. We talked a little bit prior to the episode. So I'm interested in finding out about this with you. So welcome, Jeff. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Holley. And it's always a pleasure to talk to people about this issue. It's so important, and especially people like yourself who are forging out on your own based on your experiences to try to, there's so much out there trying to bring awareness to this and try to help move things in a way that children and separated families aren't exposed to these kinds of processes, because at the end of the day, they're the losers, right? That's why we're doing all of this, is for children. So always grateful to people like yourselves who are going into uncharted grounds and trying to be able to do something to make a difference with all of this.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And again, I thank you for offering your time to spend with myself and my audience. So, but anyway, so why don't we start with the Dad's Resource Center? And first of all, like how it came about, how it got started. I know that like Dr. Joel Myers is affiliated with it. So why don't I turn it over to you and you tell us how it all came about?
Sure, absolutely. So the Dad's Resource Center is based in State College, Pennsylvania. That's where Penn State is. And Joel grew up in this area and attended Penn State and got his degree in weather and created AccuWeather, which is the world's largest commercial weather-based organization. Joel, of course, is a master of the universe when it comes to weather and commerce and business and entrepreneurship, but he's also a father. And he went through some things as a single father to where he was needlessly limited in his access to the children. And he had to do a lot to be able to get his situation squared away. And now he had the capacity that a lot of people don't have in terms of resources and his fighting spirit to be able to get things where they needed to be. But when he got himself sorted out, he decided I need to do something for other fathers who don't have my capability to muscle through these things. And so he was connected with another father by the name of Mark Lynch, who similarly had gone through some things by an attorney who had helped him in his situation. And him and Mark and a couple other people were the initial founding board for the organization back in 2015. That's when articles of nonprofit incorporation were done. They hired me in 2017. My background is I'd spent 15 years as a family counselor working with children and families, direct service. So I knew the system and was pretty good helper of other people, an empath. And then I spent 15 years managing small nonprofits. So I knew how nonprofits worked and how to manage them and take care of those types of things. And so with my experience, I worked with Mark and Joel and the board to create the Dad's Resource Center. We provide education resources and advocacy for single fathers struggling to be in the lives of their children. I do a lot of mentoring with fathers. We've had over 500 fathers who've reached out to us, desperate to be in the lives of their children, just frustrated because they're being cut out, not able to be in the lives of their children, primarily because of the family court system. And I've spoken to a lot of those, most of those, and I've locally here in Center County and other parts of Pennsylvania, I've been able to get out and go to court hearings and meet the fathers and see what's going on with their situations. And so we've helped a lot of fathers as best you can in these situations. We've been involved in some systems change efforts. We helped to get a bill passed in 2022 to create the Pennsylvania Advisory Committee on Greater Father Involvement. I chaired that committee. We did a report that then was forwarded to the General Assembly and the governor, recommending a standing fatherhood commission in Pennsylvania. And we're part of the group that's trying to help make that happen also. We're active in helping to get a 50-50 shared parenting bill passed here in Pennsylvania. And we've done other things. We've served on other statewide boards and things like that. So we're recognized as a voice for fathers and as a respected organization because our belief, where we're coming at with all of this is children need both their mother and father actively involved in their children's lives growing up to have the best chance of being happy and successful adults, right? That's what it's about. And so any child is unnecessarily hurt if, for no good reason, a willing and able parent is not able to be in their lives, right? That shouldn't occur. I can say most separated families, a lot of them, the mother and father are able to work things out reasonably well on their own or with a little bit of help. So we recognize that. And we also recognize, and this needs to be said ahead of time, because our spectrum or our view of things is the challenges that fathers face. Because there's a lot out there for moms, and we support that 100%, right? But there's really not a lot out there for fathers. And fathers do take, on average, a rougher time in the family courts. And so that's the perspective we're coming from. But we readily acknowledge and we know there are situations where fathers are the problem. And there are situations where mothers end up being on the wrong end of things too. We do know that. And that's not acceptable to us either, right? But our focus is for fathers because that's just what our focus is. But the point is always that mom and dad are working collaboratively to the benefit of their children, right? Doing what's best for their children, which means also making sure the other parent can be active in the lives of their children. That's what we're shooting for. We're just coming from it from the father's end primarily. But again, I mean, there have been some mothers that we've kind of helped in different ways. And we also have grandparents reaching out to us. And that's one of the things that people lose sight of in these situations, because if you cut a mother or a father out of the lives of their children, you're cutting out half their lineage, right? It isn't just that parent. It's that parent's parents and the cousins and the nephews and the uncles. Like that's just, they're losing those experiences and those, all that you can benefit from what those people can give to children. And it's needless and it's senseless and it hurts children. It just flat out hurts them, as well as all the acrimonious type of behavior and the uncertainty that occur in these types of situations. So that's who the Dad's Resource Center is. That's what we're looking to do.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because, yes, that when you cut off a parent, you are um, prohibiting that child from half of who they are. And, um, that part of their family, they're not even able to know that side of their family, so, and it's unfair to them. What officially is the mission of the Dad's Resource Center? I know we talked
To
about it,
provide
but what officially is the mission?
to provide education, resources, and advocacy for single fathers struggling to be in the lives of their children, primarily due to the family court, county, and human services systems.
Gotcha. Okay. So what personally drew you to this purpose, this particular, because it hadn't even had been created yet. So what drew you to want to do this?
Well, it's interesting because it's almost like a culmination or something that a lot of different aspects of me, myself, my life, my path, my journey kind of connected with Dr. Myers. And so, like I said, professionally, I had two different careers that were important to be able to help us do what we've been able to do. But I grew up as an only child, born to a single mother in the 60s. And that's a tough situation. And my mom did the best that she could. But even to this day, I couldn't tell you who my father is. Like,
Mm,
I had no father growing up. And even to this day, I have a bit of a hole in my soul for
mhm,
not having had a father. And my life, it took me a little bit longer to get going, figure out what I was doing, like just different ways, not having that father figure. Now I have a lot of resilience and drive of my own. So I was able to kind of get past it. But the best way I can describe it is if you don't have a father, it kind of amplifies the issues that you may have inherently. So if you have you're more likely to be involved in drug use. We know that girls are more likely to, well, children in general, but girls are more likely to have sex earlier in life and get themselves in some more difficult situations because of that. I mean, there's
uh-huh,
so many different ways. And let me just take one other step back. I can say this as a father. Mothers and fathers give different but equally important things to their children. So in our family, there are things I give to my girls that mom can't give to them. And there are things mom gives to the girls that I can't give.
mhm.
And they are best off when both parents can give those things to their children. And so like I was missing that one end of things and I had to figure a lot of things out and learn a lot of hard lessons in life that if I would have had a father, I may not have had to, how to deal with people and be a man and just different, like even going into a mechanic shop to get my car fixed back in the 80s, right? These guys walked all over me, but if
Right.
I would have had a father, I'd have had a father to come in with me and then I'd have known how to handle the situations with my father. So that's why my daughter now, like I'm careful. She's out there now on her own and going in the shops to get her car fixed, but I'm like coaching her up, and she
Right.
also went with me to buy a car. Right. So like I taught her how to deal with salesmen and, buying a car. Right. And so these
Right.
are just the things I missed out on myself growing up. So doing this kind of it brings me back to the core of who I am as a human being and what kind of really one of the biggest things that has impacted me in my life is not having a father. And that's what happens with a lot of the children that we get involved with because we're working with their fathers. They're being denied that opportunity because of the systems.
Understood. And that's a very, 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 um, I'm lost my train of thought, but that's a very, I can't, my mind just went blank, but a very valiant way to go. That's the word.
Thank
So,
you.
in your experience, what is the most, in dealing with the dads that you do, but what is the most misunderstood thing about the struggling fathers that you deal with? What is the most misunderstood thing you think?
Well, I'd make 2 points. I think fatherhood in 2026 is different from fatherhood back in, like, 1970, right? I think now there were the fathers who coached Little League Baseball and did those kinds of things back then,
Mhm,
but fathers were a little more hands off. It was still coming off, they were the primary breadwinners, so they went to their blue collar or their white collar job, and mom was the housekeeper and those kinds of things. But as we've gotten into society where both parents are primarily working now, and
mhm,
there's been a reorganization to where the roles in the house are getting a little more intermingled, where fathers are doing more cleaning in the house and taking the kids to doctor's appointments and things like that. But the identity now for both parents is their children. And so, like, if your children are involved in sports today, that's what you build your whole life and your whole world around. So,
mhm,
fathers are more engaged in being actively involved in the lives of their children now than ever on all those different levels. I think most people realize that, but the court systems in particular, they're not kind of in that same dynamic with that. The other part of that is fathers. What we're dealing with is this slice where you get in the family courts, and fathers who are able and willing and
mhm.
active and dying to be in the lives of their children are prevented from doing that. And so what isn't recognized in the court system and some of the human services system is better with that, but still not as good as what it could be, is that there's an equality there in terms of both parents on all these different levels. But fathers are given less, they're held to a higher standard in terms of things that occur. Mothers are given a lot more grace. And again, we don't have a problem with that, honestly,
Mhm,
right? We
mhm.
support mothers. That's fine. But there are situations where you do have mothers that really are not, they're problematic in different ways.
Sure.
Substance abuse, mental health, and all those different types of things. And so they get a lot of grace in those types of situations. Whereas fathers who they may be flawed, they may be angry because it's a loss of power. So the anger is misunderstood as like being angry and dangerous and those types of things, but it's trauma because they want to be in the lives of their children and they can't. And so that blows out in terms of being angry, right?
Mhm.
That is differently, right? That's viewed as them being controlling or whatever, that kicks into those types of things. And so the way the systems, the family court system is really stuck in this 1970s kind of thinking, when awareness of domestic violence was just becoming building, and you
Yes.
had a lot of women who were in really bad situations. So we had those things put into place because they needed help. They needed to be taken out of those situations. It isn't that as much anymore. We need to help women who are in those legitimately in those types of situations, but the court is still stuck that men are that primarily in a lot of these situations when that really isn't the case.
Fair enough. But listen, it is I can say from my experience, it's a very, and not only that, but from what I've understood lately, the latest is that right now, from what Rael tells me, 50% of alienated parents are mothers, and then 50% are fathers, I think, right now. So it's pretty much down the middle. However, to what you just said, that's a very fine line because, I do believe fathers may get the raw end of the deal sometimes because of that, because of domestic violence, issues. But at the same time, there's the narcissist qualities that for me, that's what happened. And it's hard, it's a fine line to walk. So, and I'm not saying that just happens with mothers or I'm not saying that because it does happen with men too, with fathers. It's not just gender specific at all. It happens to dads too. So, but it's very hard to prove for sure in the court systems. So I'm just saying it's very difficult. So,
Yep, absolutely.
so how does fatherhood impact a man's mental health as far as what you see? I know I've interviewed a couple of fathers, but in ways that we don't talk about enough. I'm sure you've seen it more often than, the gentleman that I've talked to, but how do you think it impacts them and their mental health?
Kind of going back to what I had said earlier, it's the identity that you
Yeah,
have as a father now is preempt much more so than in years gone by. I can tell when our girls were born, um, our youngest, Alexa, I was in there with my wife when she was giving birth, and as Alexa was being born, I felt this wave of energy go into my chest, right? It just boom, and I had the same thing when Zoe was born too, and I went when I had children, so, like, I could watch a movie basically pre-children where someone was running puppies over with a mower, and I'd be like, "Yeah, whatever." But now I get all emotional watching movies now, right? And it's because I had children and it opened this thing up for me. And I
right.
think that's what happens then becoming fathers that we've become more open to over the years. And so there's just more of a heart space that exists now with men and their children, more and more so, which each and every day is we've let down some of those things that back in, the 70s and 60s, the physical discipline and all that other kind of stuff. We're just in a different space as a society, roles and all those types of things. And more men just get that heart space with children. So there's a whole nother emotional avenue that has opened up for men over time in that way. And so when you get into these situations where you're unable to be able to be there when your heart space has been open, and as you alluded to, men have a hard time opening up
Mhm.
generally, and then it gets societally beat into you, right? Everything in the media is men are all tough, and men,
Right.
no, oh, you're carrying way to dump your purse, man, right? So like all the men around you, and even women to a certain extent, everyone, oh, we like an emotional guy, but even women kind of look down generally on guys who are, aren't manly enough. A lot of women, anyways. So, like, in addition to that, just being there for you, whatever chromosomes a men have, it gets societally reinforced for you to have those things, and it makes it hard for you to open up. So, when you have this genuine heart channel that opens up with these children, and then you cuddle them and you spend time with them and you play with them and let them lay on you as kids, and you invest all your time and energy in them, and then to be put in a situation where you're just denied that, regardless of a mother or father, when you are put in that situation, that's a trauma.
Yes.
What bigger trauma can you face than being powerless over being able to be actively involved in your parents, in your children's life, to enjoy them, to parent them, right? To be a part of their lives. And so that's traumatic. And men suffer that trauma too. They talk about trauma informed care in the human services systems and sometimes in courts. Again, that's primarily women and children, and you don't view men so much through the lens of trauma. But that is a very significant trauma that men experience when they're needlessly denied the opportunity to be in the lives of their children.
All right. Well, what are some of the warning signs that a father is silently struggling? Have you witnessed any of that?
Well, the fathers who reach out to us are fathers who genuinely, again, want to be in the lives of their children. Just the filter, like maybe our website, the way we have things organized, or at the website, or people who watch my videos that I do, they know who we are and what we do. So we
Mhm.
don't get a lot of fathers. We've had some discussions with fathers. We're like, no, you're not. No, you're not in the place that you need to be in our view for various reasons. So we're not, it's not a match. But the 95 plus percent of the fathers who reach out to us, they may be flawed. They may
Mhm.
have issues, right? They may be very raw about things, but they love their children deeply, and as much as they can under the circumstances, they're not running the mother down. They're not being abusive in the way that they're talking about the mother to us. And so those are who we're dealing with, and they're just wanting to be in the lives of their children. And one of the things I have to really start coach them on is this isn't something that's going to get fixed overnight,
Right.
right? The way the courts work, right? In order for you to be able to survive this as a person, you need to understand what is and isn't what is in your control and what isn't in your control. So you need to know if the courts have absolute control, and it's going to be a year, 2 years to be able to get to that basic level of being able to have unsupervised visits, some custody time, depending on how complex the case is. and you need to work what you can take care of in the here and now, the things that you need to do to file for court or what your lawyer's asking you to do. Be able to, if you're in supervised visits, get into your supervised visits, and whether you like it or not, you got to be able to do what you need to do to get out of those and work your short-term goals to be able to get to your intermediate goals to get to your long-term goals, where ultimately you want to have some regular, extensive access to your children on your own without people looking over your back while you're doing it. And part of that comes along with that is taking care of yourself, reaching out to people that you can talk to, utilize professionals if you're at the level that you need professional help. Church, sometimes a lot of fathers aren't situated where they have a job in the setting to be able to have a pet, but having a dog, having a pet, something that you can be real and human with and have a shared entity, like having a dog or even a cat, when you're an alienated father, gives you a common ground that can help connect you with the children, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just more managing. They're there, they're in it, and they've reached out because they want to try to break through on some level. And then it's more about us trying to help fathers work through the trauma and the current emotional and mental state that they're in. And we certainly have had fathers who are suicidal,
Mm-hmm.
who open up, and on some level, there's some suicidal thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to have those discussions and also kind of enforce with them or reinforce with them or try to say, hey, you need professional help. Let's try to find some place where you're at that can help with those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we need to do that with fathers. So it's more about triage in the here and now, and then being able to start to build up the capabilities to be able to withstand everything that you need to go through and be aware of, and not accept or say that it's okay, and not to stop fighting to be in the lives of your children, but understand that you need to uh, reserve yourself and help yourself and take care of yourself to be able to get through it. And also your children need you to be in the best state of mind as possible, to be the best person that you can be when you are with them, and even from a distance, because children will pick up on things and understand things. And so you need to take care of yourself for your children, however it plays out over time in your relationship with them.
Right. And so, which leads me to the question, how do you gently incorporate the mother, or not gently incorporate the mother into the picture? Do you, or do you just kind of leave that alone when you're working with the dad?
And I just want to go back and reiterate, people work it out on their own together, one way or the other, as best they can. There's situations where fathers are the problem. Absolutely. There's situations where it's kind of lower level and fathers can kind of muck through it. But we're dealing with a specific type of situation where the mother is actively working to keep the father out of the lives of their children.
Yeah.
And so in those situations, it's more of a malicious behavior on behalf of the mother,
Right.
most times in those situations. So, and it varies. Some of the fathers are like, look, I just want my every other weekend at this point, and to be able
Yeah.
to contact them and be able to talk to them when we can, text and all of those types of things. Some fathers believe 50-50 is best. Some of the fathers believe this situation, the children are really not in a good situation. I think I should have primary custody because they're in a dangerous situation. There's some issues that I'm seeing. And so we got to just work based on what the father's assessment is and based on our sense of that. And sometimes I got to say, look, based on what you're telling me, that's not going to happen. Based on some of the things you said and done, sometimes that's a discussion. Sometimes it's like, unfortunately, based on the way things operate, you're not going to get there more than likely. So you may want to have tempered expectations with things. But we always, as we say, mothers and fathers work together as best they can. And so that's what we expect of our fathers, to be a man. And that does require them a lot of times to set things aside and be the bigger person, right? Most times they are. Sometimes I got to kind of say, you got to get past holding on to that. You got to let go of that, dude. Right. Yeah. So I definitely had those kinds of conversations with fathers.
So it's basically a situation by situation basis, but for the most part, they're pretty much high conflict situations for the most part. Okay. All right. Well, what do
Yes.
you see as the emotional toll when on the children when a healthy parent is ripped or pushed out of a child's life? What have you witnessed?
Thank you for that, because one of the reasons why we can't progress with this is it's always, oh, mom and dad aren't getting along, right? That's how
Mhm.
the courts view it. They really do not really, they say the words best interest of the children. They say that because they have
Right.
to, but they really don't operate at that level.
No.
Right. You know, they
No.
don't. So, right. So here's what happens with the children's perspective. And I've seen this, like, again, my prior work when I was doing direct service, I saw it at the children's level there. And I do, in some instances, see it really intimately with children in my role with the Dad's Resource Center. So they get put in a bad position because, first off, there's uncertainty, right? The situation is never resolved because, oh, well, the courts, we don't know. We got a court hearing coming up 6 months from now or whatever. So they're always in a perpetual state of uncertainty instead of just having mom and dad working together. We're doing this. Okay. Can I do this? Yes, do this. Right. So they're constantly caught with that. They're put in a situation where they got to make business decisions.
Yes.
They may know where the parent that they're with, who's successfully alienating, and the court's got to allow that to happen. Right. And one of the things I want to just beat my head off in the courts is where a parent has primary custody and the other parent has maybe a weekend once or twice a month and a phone call. And the parent who has primary custody is accusing the parent who only has that every other weekend of somehow alienating. And they're trying to take more time from the parent based on that would-be alienation. And the judge is like, yeah, that makes sense to me. And I'm like, how can it make sense when they're asking to take more? The parent who's alienating is the other parent. But
Right.
this is just a kind of craziness in courts, right? But when the children, they can pick up on the vibes with this and know, and they love both parents, even
Right.
the alienating parent, love that parent. But they know that parent is in charge and that things are breaking with that parent. So they will say or do things understanding that that's the household that they got to live in, right? They got to make those business decisions, right? And so that occurs, right? You know, and they get put in a situation where they would just like mom or dad to come over and pick them up after school to go clothing shopping and then take them to practice. And
Mhm.
they know that that's going to turn into an absolute shit show if they try to bring it up. So they don't do it. Right.
Right.
So they constantly put in all of these different types of situations because the parents do these things and then courts allow for these things to occur.
Right.
And I've seen children I know who, from my time doing direct service with them, I know children as a counselor. And I know they're going to struggle in life moving forward, the types of children. And that it's made worse in these types of situations when you have a parent alienating a parent. They're going to have an even harder time because of
Mhm.
that growing up, whether it's a boy or a girl and in different ways. And even one of my board members has said, who's gone through this, my kids are not going to be able to have functional relationships with their children. I
Mhm.
just know it because of what all they went through with us, you know. So the impact on the children is just completely immeasurable on a lot of different levels. They're put in really bad situations, and it's the courts that enable it and allow it to happen. If the courts would, at the very beginning, take control in a good way and say, I don't want to hear you talking about the other parent. I
Mhm.
don't like you bring up if they're not doing this or that, but we're not going to spend 75% of the entire day we're in court grinding on what the other parent isn't doing. I want to hear what you are going to do, right?
Yeah.
To make this successful for the children. What are you going to do to make it work with the other parent? Because then that's sending the message. That's what we're doing in this court. We're not looking to tear someone down, to run them off. Which parent is going to, what are you guys going to do to make this work with each other? And they would spend a whole lot less of their time ferreting through for years, half a decade in these custody situations, if they held the parents to that standard versus constantly just allowing them to come in and do this thing, well, oh, we're going to run that parent down and, oh, this parent didn't do this. If courts took control of things from the outset, did things in that way, a lot of this wouldn't exist.
Right. I I couldn't agree more. And sometimes I feel bad for the children because assuming, since I'm not an alienated child, but sometimes I imagine them being like feeling like they're in a communist country where they don't even have freedom of speech. They can't even talk freely. You know what I mean? Like they can only say what they're told to say or things like that. That's what I imagine. So from your perspective, how common is parental alienation and why do you feel it's so misunderstood?
Pretty much it's inherent. Any custody case that has to be in family court for any significant amount of time, there's a certain degree of alienation that's occurring. Now, it's usually heavily in one direction. Sometimes both are engaging in it to some degree. It could be like 50-50 on parental alienation too. I imagine that is situations that occur, like War of the Roses or something along those lines.
Right.
But uh, uh, but again, I remember like I've been doing this since 2017, and that was the big hope I was hearing from fathers. They're going to recognize parental alienation. This is going to be this is going to do it, man. This is going to help. And I'm like, no, because let me take a step back,
Sure.
okay? And I'll circle around to that. When I was doing direct service, it was in the dependency court. Dependency court is children and youth or child protective services. And when children are in a situation where their safety is in risk in some way due to abuse or neglect, the county children and youth office comes in and they assess that and they go to the court and they say, we want to take custody of the children. That's called dependency. And so I worked for providers that work for children, youth in those types of situations. And we worked in situations where we had genuine neglect, intergenerational neglect, where families that are years and years of low income and their houses are just incredibly unkept. Children's hygiene is not kept up. They're feeding them sugar, so their teeth is rotting out of their mouths. Those types of situations, or there's abuse or physical abuse where we're going to physically discipline our kids. No one can tell us we can't do that. So this is the kind of work that when I was doing direct service, we were doing. And we were working with the courts in situations where it was true abuse or neglect. In the mid 90s, reunification came into place where children were stuck in childcare or foster homes or group homes for years on end. It wasn't good for the children and it was costing a lot of money. So processes were put into place, formalized processes where children and youth had to go into an official capacity to do reunification with these kinds of families. And there'd be a review every 6 months. It was a 2-year process. And they would say, okay, these are the issues. We're going to work with them. We're going to give them all these services to help the parents be able to get in a position that they can successfully parent their children. And after 6 months, they do a review and say, we're making progress, but there's more that needs to be done, or there's not a lot of progress. After a year, they're saying, this isn't looking good, but we're going to keep working with them, or we just need to do a little bit more, and then we're going to make a recommendation for the children to come home. But by a year and a half, they either say, this can't work, and we're going to recommend that the parents have their rights terminated, and children have permanency. They go into adoption or some situation like that, or the children are successfully brought back to their parents. This is the dependency court. The judges that do family court and the lawyers that do family court also do dependency court. They know these processes. But over time, as family court has kind of gotten off the tracks, they've implemented all these dependency court interventions into family court. So parents can be recognized as having been abusive in ways that you had to go to court and really give actual evidence to say that parents have been abusive in a way that counties took their children. It's a high level of standard to be able to do that. But when it's a parent, there's no standard. A parent could just make an accusation and they're like, yeah, okay, that sounds bad, and give children, right? So the standard is lowered in family court to be able to reach these thresholds of interventions that occurred when you had to have that higher standard when counties were taking custody of children, when counties have to take custody of children. So now, and the supervised visits are another thing. Like we did supervised visits with people who absolutely were abusing their children. We knew it. everyone knew it, but the children wouldn't testify, so they can't have criminal prosecution for it, but they have that children and youth designation or these neglect cases. But all you have to do is say, I want supervised visits in a family court. Okay, let's do it. And so all these things have been lowered. So this leads back to this discussion about parental alienation is once this concept got put into the family courts, they just need to make that accusation and weaponize it. There doesn't need to be proof. They can weaponize it. And so there you have it. And so courts really have this such extraordinarily low standard in family courts to make these things implemented that impact a child's access and a parent's access to their children. And so parental alienation, whereas we can prove parental alienation, and then that'll be justification to be able to turn around this situation where I'm having my access to my children limited. No, it's just one other thing that has been weaponized against the parents who are already getting parental alienation. I'm sorry, that's a very long path I had to travel, but I wanted to explain it.
That's okay. That's okay. You got there. You got there. So what is one success story that still stays with you today that you've worked through?
We don't see too many. Most of them continued entrenched, and that's just being honest about things. We have seen some situations.
I'm assuming because they take because of the court system too, it's just a difficult process.
As I'm sure in your situation, you knew, like people who get into it, they think, oh, well, we'll just set a court hearing a month from talk about this and get it. No, it takes a half a year to maybe have that first hearing. And then they're putzing around with this and that, no evidence and this and that. And we got to bring this person in. And so then it's a year. Next thing you know, it's 2 years. So yes, I'm sure you've been through that whole rigmarole, and people don't know that because people like yourself have never been in a court before. You've never had dealings with court. You know how courts act. And so then there's that lag. But when you talk about success stories, the success stories I'm seeing now are really just becoming like I've been doing this now for 7-8 years, and I'm just now seeing some success stories that it's been 3 or 4 years, right?
Yeah.
Where fathers finally were able to get through all those hoops, and fathers who like, yep, I got my weekends. You know, it could have happened 3 years ago. So we're now seeing some more success stories than what we've seen up until this point.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're seeing something. So how can the communities and albeit courts and systems do better by fathers and families? How do you, I mean, you've mentioned some, but are there any other things that you can think of? Are there any
they're
other
big system changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're big system changes we're talking about. We're active in Pennsylvania. There's a representative, Jamie Flick is his name, and a state representative. He's working very hard to get a 50-50 shared parenting bill that the standard would be at the point of any entry in the family courts, both parents are considered to have 50-50 custody unless some form of that, whether it's something along those lines, unless there's real good reasons. That would be helpful. But even then, judges, they have a lot of leeway in courts, and a lot of them think the way they want to think. But immediately, whether it's a mother or father, family and friends, be supportive, get to court hearings, and just really try to help and be a resource as much as what you can to support the parents who are going through this. In the Dad's Resource Center, what we're doing, organizations like this, be able to work with us and maybe try to get something like that going locally. We help fathers here in our central Pennsylvania area and across the state of Pennsylvania. And we always respond to fathers who reach out from across the country as best we can. But people try to get something going locally, the Facebook group, even if it's a Facebook group, something like that to help people locally and build that network, to be able to help parents, all parents. It doesn't have to be exclusive to fathers, alienated parent groups, whatever it may be locally, to try to be able to create those networks where you can actually be able to maybe have a cup of coffee with people. And again, help go to a court hearing and support people, because sometimes a judge may act a little bit better if they see some other people in the courtroom as opposed to one parent just sitting there. So those are some things that can be done.
Well, good. Well, what has this work taught you overall?
Just the value overall of having both parents. 1/3 of our families in this country are separated families. So 1 out of 3 children is living in a separated family, and that's not going to go back. And the point of emphasis, healthy marriages and all those types of things, we need to support that and try to help parents understand what they're getting into when they get married and if they're going to have children. But recognize we're not going back. Divorce in this country is the way that it is, and that we need to bring ourselves up to where the world is today, and that non-nuclear families are successful and operate a little different. We're connected in different ways. There's a lot more demand and a lot more going on, but we have a lot of different ways to make things like that work. And so to value separated families in a way that we ensure that both parents, mothers and fathers, have the opportunity to be active in the lives of their children, because those children are going to face more challenges than the average children to begin with. So we don't want to hinder it or make it worse by allowing one willing and able parent to unnecessarily and needlessly be cut out of the lives of their children.
Right. And so, what would you say directly to a father who may be watching this, who feels or who may be being cut out or feels invisible or defeated right now? What would you say to them? May not be in Pennsylvania, may be somewhere in the country, but what would you say to that?
A couple of things I always say to fathers. Number one, no one knows the mother and the children better than you do. And that goes the other way. No one knows the father better than a mother knows the father too. But also to trust your gut. Trust your gut. If you think something's going to happen, it's probably going to happen. Follow your heart. And so different people make different situations. And I've talked to fathers who they genuinely have stepped away, because they knew where it was going to go. And they didn't want the children to go through it. That's hard. And you have to respect everyone's lived experience. And if that's really, truly what they, it's tough. You can't judge someone. But then if you believe that you need to fight, then fight. Again, you got to be able to balance it out and understand what you can and can't control and accept what you can't control, but keep fighting.
All right. Well, so how can people support the mission of the Dad's Resource Center?
The website is dadsrc.org. DADSRC, Dad's Resource Center.org. Go to the website, follow our social media, and donate if you want to donate. And if you feel you have something to offer, let us know. We always try to, we have different fathers in different places that we have doing different things, and who we connect and point in different directions so that they might be able to help in a certain way. One of the things, 95% of the fathers that come to us, they say, I want my experience to mean something. I want it to have meaning. I want it to help so that other fathers, other parents don't have to go through what I've gone through. And so now when they're fighting in their own fight, it's tough for them to do that. Some try to, but it's tough. You got to kind of just work on yourself and your situation. Get out there, and I can point people to people like Robert Garza and Mark Ludwig, who are big names across the country right now doing this kind of work. I can help connect them with people like that, organizations and groups, so that maybe they can help make a difference in that regard.
Yep. Very familiar with Robert Garza. He's from my great state of Texas and has done some really awesome work. As far as
he's done some amazing work.
Yes, he's
Yep.
him and
he's done some amazing work.
Yep, him and Claudia Avalis have done some amazing legislation. I'm very, very grateful to him. So, but yes, so Jeff, I appreciate the work that you're doing for fathers, because, and I have I think, because listen, anybody who is alienated from their children shouldn't be. I don't care if you're a man or a woman, father, mother, grandparent. It's just unnecessary, and it just shouldn't happen. So I do appreciate the work that you're doing for fathers and trying to help them get back and have a relationship with their children, because the children didn't ask for it and they just want to love both of their parents. And so I appreciate you supporting the dads that need the support, because it is a very difficult road. And I am one of those parents that had to back off because I didn't want my daughter going through that. So I do understand that part. But thank you so much for explaining the Dad's Resource Center. And I will put all of your information in the episode description so that people can get in contact with you, and, get to your website. And I do appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and tell us what you do and how you support everyone. And thank you so much.
It's been an honor, Holly, and I want to thank you for what you're doing again, and support what you're doing, and wish you grace in your lived experience in dealing with all of this.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. And listen, take care. And I hope you avoid another snowstorm. If you want one, hey, take it. We'll let you have one. Texas, we'll let you have one up there. So anyway,
All right.
take care. And everybody, thank you for watching this episode, and stay tuned for the next one. So take care.
Hey.